Coming up on Lawmakers, Georgia legislators give a vote of confidence to the board of the Department of Transportation. Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle voices his support for a measure he says would provide property tax relief. And legislation aimed at more disclosure for rapid refund loans. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, and Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Good evening, everyone. Also on Lawmakers, it's the end of another legislative week. We'll take a look back.
And we'll check in with Tom Crawford of CapitalImpact.com. But first, our top story tonight, elections for the board of the Georgia Department of Transportation. House and Senate members give a vote of confidence today to the current DOT board despite accusations of mismanagement. Lawmaker Sandra Parrish joins us now with more. Sandra.
In Wandy, 5 elections were held today, 2 to re-elect unchallenged incumbents and 1 to replace an outgoing board member. But the elections that drew the most attention were contested races against board chairman Mike Evans and board member Rabin Anderson, both supporters of new DOT Commissioner Gina Abram.
I look forward to, shaking hands and all getting back on the same page and moving forward, and that's my pledge, and I hope we'll all do that.
House Speaker Glenn Richardson has come out publicly against DOT Board Chair Mike Evans, saying he should be held responsible for the mismanagement of millions of dollars of local road project money. Evans and board member Rabin Anderson also supported the governor's choice for Commissioner Gina Abrams instead of Richardson's choice, Representative Vance Smith.
Certainly we're, unpaid employees or unpaid board members, and we're not there every day. But we've got a champion and the commissioner that's there every day that's intent on making that department run like we want it to be for the last several years. So I'm excited about it. As much as anything today, I'm glad because I want to be a part of the great things I think that she'll accomplish over the next few years.
In the end, Evans beat former House member Stacey Reese 13 votes to 10. Anderson fended off 2 opponents also to win re-election.
We've been asking where we were at money-wise, and we have not been given that information factually like we should have, and I agree with our governor. We need to move forward. We don't need to look back, blame whatever, whomever. We need to move forward for the good folks of this state.
Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle admits he campaigned for both Evans and Anderson.
I don't think it necessarily was a win for, for the lieutenant governor or a win for the governor. Or a loss for the speaker. I think it was really a win for Georgia. The truth is that these 2 individuals are principled men, and they followed their principle, and justice prevailed. And I think that this state's going to be better served by having the commissioner that we have in Georgia, and they're going to be better served because we've got honorable people serving as DOT board members.
Now, we attempted to get reaction from Speaker Richardson regarding today's elections, but he was unavailable due to the tragic death of 6 prominent state Republicans in a plane crash in North Carolina this afternoon. Among the victims were Paulding County Commissioner Hal Eccles, developer Steve Simpson, and John Rakestraw, who had been appointed by the governor to the board of the Department of Community Affairs. Our thoughts and prayers are with those families tonight. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Sandra Parrish.
All right, thanks, Sandra. Lieutenant Governor Cagle announced his support today for a constitutional amendment to provide tax relief for homeowners. Senate Resolution 796 freezes local property taxes and keeps them from increasing any more than 2% a year for residential and 3% for non-residential property. Lieutenant Governor Cagle explains why he supports SR 796.
As you know, property taxes and the rate of growth in property taxes has been a huge concern. There's no predictability to it, and there's no uniformity to the process. Your neighbor could be being assessed completely different than you are at a different method, but also at a different rate. And then there's the fact that your property tax could double in value from one year to the next. And we all know that it happens, and it could be for no reason of your own, no improvements or anything, but just the fact that your neighbor's home sold at a much higher rate than what you purchased yours for. We need to find real remedy there, and so really what this bill will do is it'll freeze assessment across Georgia for residential and non-residential properties, keeping it at a rate rate that would only increase by 2% for residential, 3% for non-residential. I think it's fair. Communities that would want to get out from under that cap would be able to do so, but they would have to first get the approval of the constituents, of the electorate. And so it's a fair, balanced approach that can really hopefully bring some sanity to much of this process.
And you said it can change if there are improvements. Explain the ways it can change.
Well, certainly, you know, an assessment would revalue itself once an individual did improvements on their property. Of course, that would constitute an increase in value. With major structural changes and things of this nature where there's a significant value adjustment, then it would reprice at that point.
And just to note, this legislation will not affect the millage rate. Senator Chip Rogers is sponsoring SR 796, which is expected to be in committee as soon as this Tuesday. And new legislation targeting predatory lending practices was introduced in the House this week, and lawmakers Bridget Snapp is at the Capitol with more. Bridget.
David, House Bill 1030, sponsored by Representative Rob Tilley, would require full disclosure of the fees and interest rates associated with loans on expected income tax returns. According to statistics, these loans, called refund anticipation loans, carry interest rates of up to 500% and usually target low-income taxpayers.
What HB 1030 does is seek to give consumers more information about what's called refund anticipation loans. They're marketed to people as instant tax refunds, but they're really loans at triple-digit interest rates, 300%, 400%, 500%. And so we're trying to require the industry to make sure that consumers realize that when they think they're getting an instant tax refund, what they're actually getting is a predatory loan.
Representative Tilley said these types of loans are highly prevalent.
They're all over the place. Refund anticipation loans, again marketed as instant tax refunds, are eating up about half of the earned income tax credit dollars that come to the metro Atlanta area and the state of Georgia.
Representatives of Georgia Watch, a consumer advocacy group, fully support the bill.
We're going to watch this bill really closely. We think it's a real good idea. The bill provides a lot more disclosure to consumers before they file their taxes with a tax preparation firm so that they know how much this is going to cost them and that they do have an option to get their refund quickly without any cost to them. If you file electronically and you also choose to have the refund directly deposited into your bank account, you can get your refund in about 10 days.
Georgia Watch estimates that refund anticipation loans have taken $1 billion out of the hands of taxpayers nationwide. The bill is currently in the House Banks and Banking Committee, and Representative Tilley said he looks forward to a hearing in the near future. Reporting from the Capitol, I'm Bridget Snapp for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Bridget. The Senate today rejected the House version of a controversial gun carry legislation. House Speaker Glenn Richardson responded, saying the House cannot agree to the 45-day gun licensing provision.
The bill we sent over to the Senate yesterday, House Bill 89, they have disagreed with our position. And so we're just going to insist and appoint unless they're, I don't know, we don't have another motion available unless I guess we could recede. I don't intend to recede. That would mean that we would not take, that we would have that bill out there the way they did it, which would mean that probate judges would have to issue licenses even if there's a bad report.
Richardson appointed Representatives David Ralston, Sean Jurgensen, and Ron Bearden to a House Senate Committee of Conference. And in other House news, just in time for Super Bowl Sunday, the House approved a resolution urging the NCAA to implement a playoff system for the National College Football Championship.
On this Sunday, in the minds of a lot of us, the greatest sporting event of all time will occur, that being the 2008 Super Bowl. After a regular season of competition and a series of playoff successes, one of these teams will be crowned Super Bowl champion. The only major sporting event without a playoff system to identify its true champion that I know of is NCAA Division I football.
H.R. 1034 passed 151 to 9. It moves to the Senate. Criticized for his campaign to impeach Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, Representative Ron Forrester infused a bit of humor into today's presentation.
What I'd like you to do right now, I'd like for you to stand up. Come on, I'd like for you to stand up. Stand up. Get a little exercise. Stand up. Stretch your legs. And I want you to stretch your arms. Do a little stretch. Do a little stretch. All right. Sit down. There you go, Mr. Speaker.
I'm sorry. I saw it.
Okay. I told the Speaker if I could get 91 hands in the air, he'd bring the impeachment resolution to the floor.
He did say that.
It's the 10th day of the session. We've had one veto override. The interpretation is not on the word consider. It's on that portion of the paragraph in the Constitution. It was set up so the governor could not get an alliance with the Speaker or alliance with the Lieutenant Governor and stop this legislative body's power. The Senate, it says the bill from which the House originated. If the Senate did a Senate override, they got 2/3 the vote. They would have to immediately transmit it to the House, and we would have to immediately consider, which means immediately vote. That would prevent the governor from having to get an allowance with every 180 of us. That's why that portion of the Constitution is there.
The DOT elections took up most of the legislature's time today, but the Senate managed to deal with a couple of issues prior to the elections. Legislation that reimburses counties that house state inmates passed this morning, and Senator Johnny Grant explained Senate Bill 360.
It will make you heroes with your county commissioners and your sheriffs. What it does is raise the floor, the minimum that we pay to reimburse for the keeping of state inmates in county jails, raises that minimum to $30. Currently, the state is paying $22 per day for state inmates that are housed in county jails. And we have made attempts over the last several years to move that up. And this is something that I want to thank the senator from the 2nd and many of the others here in this body who have helped to move this issue forward. This has an effective date beginning in July the 1st of 2009, so this will be at the beginning of the 2010 fiscal year.
After the Senate passed SB 360 unanimously, they passed legislation from Senator John Douglas, which allows active military doctors to issue and distribute handicap permits. That bill, SB 369, also passed unanimously. And when it came time for daily announcements, Senator Cecil Staton took the well to point out a final report located on each senator's desk, which contains findings from a study committee on the doctor and nurse shortage in Georgia.
I want to strongly encourage you to read this report. It is not very long, but it is very worthwhile your time to understand the crisis that Georgia is facing. We actually have a very severe shortage of physicians and nurses in this state. We have one of the fastest growing populations in the nation. We're ranked as the 9th most populous state in our country. And we expect many more people to come to Georgia in the next few years. However, the sad reality is Georgia ranks 40th in the nation with regard to per capita number of practicing physicians, and we are 42nd in the nation in per capita supply of registered nurses. We have a severe shortage, and we must take action.
Now, Senator Staton added that he hopes to drop legislation on this issue as soon as this session.
Well, it's the end of another legislative week and time for David and me to check in with Tom Crawford, national editor of CapitolImpact.com. David began by asking Tom about the repercussions of today's DOT board elections.
There were several elections for seats on the DOT board, David. The Speaker, Glenn Richardson, had a particular interest in one or two of them, and the candidates that he was backing did not win. And he's a little upset over that, I hear, and is already taking retribution against some of the members who did not vote his way. One member in particular, Representative Tom Graves from up around Calhoun, was called in and was stripped of his committee assignments. They took away his hawk position, and he's also being booted out of his Capitol office. I understand several other House members who did not vote the way the Speaker wanted them to will face a similar fate. So it's got everybody kind of running around right now wondering who's next.
And today's elections also, I guess, heated up the ongoing battle between the House and the Senate, or reactivated them, if you will.
It sure did, because the Senate members were in favor of voting for Mike Evans and Raven Anderson, both of them incumbent board members. Speaker Richardson wanted to defeat both of those men because they had not voted his way when a new DOT commissioner was appointed last fall. So it led to quite a lot of intense hostilities back and forth. And of course the governor was also on the side of the people that the Speaker was against, so that just sort of added to the mixture, if you will.
You know, yesterday the House passed a resolution trying to keep the governor from being able to reappropriate some funds within the budget. Is this another case of the House and the Senate and the governor's office having this standoff that's been going on since last session?
That's the latest manifestation of it, and it's really a separation of powers issue. The legislature feels that if they put money in the budget for a specific purpose, it ought to be spent that way. And they introduced a constitutional amendment yesterday which would tell the governor, in the future, if we tell you to spend money this way, don't tell your department heads to ignore it. And that's really actually a good, healthy democratic debate over who should be doing what, the way state government's set up right now.
One of the other issues that both the House, Senate, and governor have all been hitting is tax reform. Many different kinds have come out. There's a new one today that Chip Rogers and the Lieutenant Governor have brought up. Talk about that.
Chip Rogers, with the support of Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, has introduced, I believe it's a constitutional amendment, to provide for more or less of a freeze or something close to a freeze on property tax assessments. They couldn't rise more than 2 or 3% in a year's time. The purpose, I think, is to get everybody onto a uniform method of handling tax assessments so people aren't getting hit with a 30 or a 40 or a 50% boost in their taxes every year. I think Chip Rogers made the point, we need a little predictability here, and if people had some predictability, they wouldn't be as upset over the tax bills that they get every year. So we'll see how far that one goes. It's an important addition to the debate, no question about it.
And while we've been following, of course, Speaker Richardson's great plan for some time now, the Democrats came out this week with their own tax plan as well.
Right. It's one to take some of the surplus money in the state budget and to give that money, I think $300 million this year, $300 million next year, back to the local school systems on the condition that the school systems roll back property taxes dollar to dollar, dollar for dollar. So that way homeowners and little businesses could get a bit of a property tax break if they decide to use the surplus money that way. Now, it's a Democratic proposal, probably won't go anywhere, but again, it's a good point to debate as we try to find out what's the best way to handle taxes.
There's a gun bill that started last year, came into this session. The Senate passed their version. House sent theirs back over. What's the latest with that?
The Senate has disagreed with some of the changes that the House made yesterday to this gun bill, and the House really voted to make the state wide open to carry guns almost anywhere, even to a football game, to a restaurant that serves alcohol, even into a church, for heaven's sake. And the Senate, I don't think, agrees that gun bills need to be loosened up quite that much. So that bill's headed for a conference committee now, and I'm not even sure they can reach an agreement on that one before the end of the session.
Switching gears a little bit to health care, we've seen both the governor, the lieutenant governor, and others coming out with their health care initiatives.
That's right. The governor had a health care proposal this week. I think it's to provide a tax break for businesses that offer what are known as high-deductible health plans or health savings accounts for their employees. I believe Lieutenant Governor Cagle had another recommendation yesterday for some health care initiatives, I think including an increase in the number of public walk-in clinics that might give people more access to health care. None of these are big sweeping changes in the system, but they are small incremental changes that might be able to help some people on the margins.
Super Tuesday's coming up. We've heard some legislators say who they support. Which way do you think Georgia's going?
Very interesting. As you know, there are 22 states holding primaries, and Georgia, for once, will have an important voice on Tuesday. Georgia voters on both the Republican and the Democratic side could well play a very big role in deciding whether it's Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama among the Democrats, or John McCain or Mitt Romney on the Republican side. So this is a very unusual position for Georgia voters to be in.
Well, we'll be back under the Gold Dome on Tuesday and check in to see how that goes. We thank you so much, Tom Crawford of CapitalImpact.com.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Transportation, law and order, and more talk of impeachment. These are just a few of the topics that have had lawmakers talking this week. On Monday,
the motion having received the 2/3 constitutional majority is therefore passed.
The Senate approved the first override of a Georgia governor's veto since Jimmy Carter led the state.
When you read the bill, you can see it's not fatal.
While Governor Perdue said he could accept the decision, House leadership is pushing the Senate to quickly consider the other 11 veto overrides approved by the House on the first day of the session.
It's interesting, the only one they took up is one that affected them in their own interests.
Meanwhile, Representative Ron Forster continues to call for the impeachment of Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle for failure to immediately bring the overrides to the Senate floor.
And I told him then, that Monday, that this would be an impeachable offense.
Just over a week before Super Tuesday voting begins, Senator Eric Johnson introduced legislation to prevent future campaigns from canvassing the public with computerized calls.
The school can call about a child, a business that you have a relationship, like your bank or your doctor can call you. But anybody else would be an unsolicited call, must have a live person on the phone.
And the Grady Hospital Board voted 9-1 to enter into a lease agreement with a nonprofit company and relinquish much of its power. On Tuesday, the House approved changes to the sex offender residency requirements to combat the state Supreme Court's ruling that parts of the current law are unconstitutional.
And as of today, there are no protections in our law.
I can virtually guarantee that this law will be struck down by the courts.
Democrats released a plan that they say could decrease property taxes and increase funding for education.
It simply is a way of returning to taxpaying citizens a part of the reserve that they themselves have helped build.
The House Education Committee agreed to broaden the methods to create charter schools. On Wednesday, the House votes to make Georgia the first state to offer consumers a way to instantly freeze their credit information as protection against identity fraud.
The fact that I can thaw my credit that fast means that this is the best of all possible worlds.
Governor Perdue makes a pitch for expanding high-deductible health plans and healthcare savings accounts in Georgia, first with the press and then with small businesses.
As a small business owner myself, I know what you all contribute to our state, but I would also suggest to you on the issue of health care, it's time to fish or cut bait for the small business people of this state. You either need to get behind these things and support them, or frankly, I don't want to hear about them anymore. You know what I mean? And that's really what the issue comes down to.
The governor says passage of House Bill 1087 will make health care affordable for 500,000 uninsured Georgians. After a year of deliberations, the Joint Commission on Transportation Funding released its findings.
We have about $200 million in federal monies that come to the Department of Labor, Department of Human Resources, Department of Community Health, DOT. We're hauling people on different vans in different directions. We need to unify all those systems and have one good system whereby the public can actually ride on those vans as well.
The House votes to limit the time it takes to process the initial appeal in death penalty cases.
So that we can streamline that process, putting deadlines on both parties for the filing of briefs after a hearing, and also putting a timeline on the court to make a ruling or to file a report indicating why they have not ruled.
Yesterday, the House votes to extend the provisions of its gun carry bill. Representative Tim Bearden successfully amended HB 89 on the floor to allow concealed weapons permit holders to carry guns not only in public parks, but also at churches, restaurants where alcohol is served, and on public transportation.
If you take your family out to a restaurant and you have that Georgia firearms license permit, you should be able to defend yourself and your family from the time you walk from the car into that building, while you're in the building, and when you walk back out.
The House also votes to create a 7-member charter commission as a third method to apply for charter school status, and passes a resolution aimed at preventing the governor from redirecting money in the state budget.
The governor must either agree with it and put that money where it was intended, or veto it, which he has the right to do. But he cannot simply just redirect it.
Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle introduces his plan to extend health care to more Georgians. And that's a look back at this week under the Gold Dome.
Members of the Dunwoody community lost another bid to incorporate yesterday in a House committee hearing, but one lawmaker is encouraging residents to consider becoming a township instead. Lawmakers Andy Dixon has more on this story.
The bills would give residents the opportunity to decide whether or not to create a city of Dunwoody. Last session, the two bills, Senate Bill 82 and Senate Bill 83, passed the Senate but did not pass the House. Currently, Dunwoody residents comprise 11% of Fulton County's tax base, but 6% of the county's population. Fulton County officials opposed the legislation because the loss of Dunwoody would cost nearly $15 million in taxes. Supporters say cityhood would give residents more control over parks and zoning. Today, Representative Jill Chambers said Dunwoody should consider becoming a township in accordance with the Georgia Township Act passed last session. A township would mean reduced taxation as well as some local controls. Chambers said a Dunwoody township would be the form of government, quote, closest to the people. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Andy Dixon.
Every legislative day in February, the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus presents a Black History vignette. Today, Caucus Chair Al Williams began with a tribute to whites who contributed to the Civil Rights Movement, including Atlanta Mayor Ivan Allen, Ralph McGill of the Atlanta Constitution, and Miles B. Lane of CNS Bank.
Malcolm McLean, former mayor of Savannah, Georgia, who stepped out and cost himself the mayorship of Savannah by standing up for what was right and fighting hard down in Savannah. Attorney Aaron Kravitz, whose daughter was later to serve on the State Court of Appeals for his tenacious defense of the less privileged and the downtrodden. And lastly, we recognize seldom heard heroes. After the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was thrown out of the state of Tennessee, they came to Southeast Georgia at Dorchester Academy, and during this time, unbeknownst to most of the country, 3 local folk welcomed Dr. King and members of the SCLC at every retreat. And those folk were Representative Charles Jones, who later was Majority Whip of this House, Judge Paul Caswell, who later retired as a Superior Court judge. Both of them are now deceased, and still living Sheriff Bobby Sykes, who in the early 60s always welcomed SCLC and Dr. King to Dorchester Academy.
And if you've noticed a lot of legislators wearing red today, it's for a good reason. Today is the annual Go Red for Women Day, raising awareness for heart disease in women. Senator Valencia C. took the well to explain.
This day will signify and let the world know that we are together when we want to recognize heart disease for women. And everybody that's wearing red today, thank you. I want to ask the women of the Senate to join me for a minute. Will you join me down front? Thank you, ladies. But this is what it's all about. The ladies wanted to thank you as well, to make sure that you all know we all appreciate you joining us in raising the awareness for Go Red for Women.
Lawmakers will not be seen Monday evening because the Georgia General Assembly will be in recess. Coming up Tuesday, when we return, an exclusive interview with House Democratic leader Deposed Porter. Again, our regular legislative coverage continues Tuesday night at 7 p.m. If you have missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. You can also keep up with all the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and evenings at 6 p.m. on Georgia Gazette. Now, stay tuned for Rick Steves' Europe Classics. Tonight's episode features Egypt. That program is coming up next here on GPB.
And that's our broadcast for this, the 10th legislative day of 2008. I'm Wendy Lawson.
And I'm David Zelski. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Tuesday night.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.